Welcome to the White Sox Recap Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey. First off, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays from us here at the Recap, and certainly from myself and my co-host that you'll see shortly, Brian Anderson. We wish you a healthy and happy 2025. Speaking of which, what's it going to look like for the White Sox? At this time of the year, we always look at New Year's resolutions and things that we could do better for ourselves and be better for our future. What does that mean for the White Sox? Maybe not resolutions. Maybe it's just a new pattern of play on the field and how the team is led off of it. Well, my co-host, Brian Anderson, joins me as the two of us discuss three things we'd like to see from the 2025 White Sox and one bold move that they make prior to reporting in Glendale. And hear this, just about 7 weeks. It's a New Year edition, the 2025 Chicago White Sox. What we want, what we hope, what we expect. Right now on the White Sox Recap Podcast. All right. My guy, Brian Anderson, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. Christmas is now in the rear view, BA. Hope you and your family had a joyous holiday, and as we look forward to a happy and healthy New Year, my friend.
You know, I shared with you a little bit. I had the best Christmas with my kid. We had such a good Christmas. She's 2. She had a blast, but then she capped it off with, Daddy, why do you have so many lines on your forehead? And I thought to myself, her mom's got to be planting that bug in her ear. No 2-year-old thinks like that.
It's good to have teammates, isn't it?
That's so Bush.
No, it's awesome that you're able to share it and get those reactions from her. And certainly the magic of Christmas is pretty awesome when you have kids. But let's discuss the 2025 season now that's right around the corner. I mean, we are coming up on, some people might be listening to this, after the new year, and we are going to get into maybe not a resolution, so maybe it's a little variation of resolutions for the 2025 White Sox. Look, they're coming off of what we all know is a catastrophically and historically bad season, a 41 and 121 loss season. It saw Pedro Grifol get the axe. It saw new manager Will Venable get his first job and his first crack at this chair. And it saw Chris Getz deal maybe the biggest trade chip of anybody in baseball, Garrett Crochet, as the White Sox no longer have a frontline ace type starter. So that's the unpacking of what was and what is. And now what happens next? Look, the win total in Vegas, depending on where you shop, is 48 to 49, like 48.5 to 49.5. It's that bad. It's that baffling. And if you think about it, that's an 8 to 10 game improvement, which most teams would take year to year. This team needs to jump a lot more than that. So, BA, I'll start with you. We're going to try to name 3 things each here that we want to see from the 2025 White Sox. What's your take? What's your first thing that you'd like to see in 2025?
Well, first off, even though Cap is the biggest homer ever and loves the Cubs, I'm thinking even Cap takes the over on that Vegas bet. I mean, maybe we'll pull our money together and I'll go out there and place it in person. But yeah, I mean, to give you some to lay the groundwork here of where we're at as a group of White Sox fans. I just left the Viore store today, and the young lady that was helping me is actually a long distant relative of a mutual friend of mine in the ownership group. And she's like, "Is your last name Anderson?" And I was like, "Yeah." I felt pretty good. She's like, "The White Sox suck." And I said, "Yeah, they're not very good right now, but the pieces in place." And she kind of looked at me and she goes, "Jerry, is it Reinsdorf?" And I said, "Yes, he is the owner, but there's 50 other pieces in place." So not to go off on a tangent, that was funny to think I was trying to buy and spend this gift card and a random lady just said they suck. So
I know. It's like once they realize, same thing happens to me. Once they realize, hey, wait, are you Ryan? Like you do the podcast, you do the Sox? Yeah. Dude, it's so bad, isn't it? I feel for you. I'm like, yeah, dude, come on. The wins and losses don't take the toll on us. It sucks that we have to talk about them, but we're not living it like the players are. We know that.
Sure. So back to your question. I think the obvious is we'll both probably agree on is they got to get something for Luis Robert, right? So I think you move him. If that means him even having shown that he's healthy the first maybe 10 games of spring training, you got to get rid of him. And you got to go get a plug and play bat, and you have to get a middle of the road starter for him. He has way too much upside, whether that be with the Reds, the Dodgers, someone that has some prospects and a pitcher to give. Boston kind of already made their play with Garrett Crochet, but my God, you got to go get a plug and play for Luis Robert, and you got to get a guy that middle of the rotation guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that. I don't know if you're going to be able to solve both those problems with one trade of Luis Robert. I like that in terms of one thing you'd like to see on your end. I have been pretty adamant on this podcast that there's really no scenario that I would walk into 2025 with Luis Robert reporting to Glendale. That only scenario is if you're really truly getting pennies on the dollar. But I think there's over 100 free agents still available. There are teams that are desperate for outfield depth or extra bats. I think about the Cubs being one of those teams. They just shaved a ton of money off their books with trading Cody Bellinger. Luis Robert costs half that and could give you superior play in the outfield. Now, where do you play him? You got Pete Crow Armstrong in center, and you got Kyle Tucker, and you got Ian Happ. You got Gold Glovers out there. That's just one team. But there are teams that I think make a lot of sense for Luis Robert. The plug and play part might be tricky because, yeah, you do have to replace him, but the White Sox are looking for controllable talent for guys that might be a year or two away. You looked at that in the Crochet deal. They got guys who aren't quite ready for 2025. But maybe in the Luis Robert case, you do need some guys to take. You need 26 guys to take the field. You need 26 guys on your roster. You need 9 guys to take the field. So to your point, maybe there is a guy, a 4-year controllable guy, or you're getting that mid-rotation piece. I'll save that because we are going to name one bold move we expect the White Sox to make prior to spring training. But I'll take that. I like your first one. Your first one that you'd like to see is Luis Robert be dealt for new, younger pieces. I will go with, this is going to sound funny and simple, but this organization, and certainly the last 3 to 4 years, has not had much of it. Competence. That's what I want. I would love to see competence from the 2025 White Sox. And that is it kind of sprays to all fields here. That's top-down competence. Chris Getz is not necessarily winning the fan vote right now, but I do think there's a chance that he could. Maybe not immediately, maybe not at the end of 2025, but as things start to go in 26 and 27, at least in my seat right now, I like a lot of the additions that he's brought in from the outside. And I'm not talking about on the field. I'm talking about off the field. He's bringing in guys from all over Major League Baseball that have come with very high accolades, very high recommendations, that have worked in other places where they've won. They're different sets of eyes. Even the Phil Nevin move. I didn't want Phil Nevin to be the White Sox manager, but I like the idea of bringing him in as a guy who's been in the game as a successful player, has been in the game as a manager, to kind of be that extra set of eyes on pro personnel.
He checked that box you were talking about, right? Yeah. Like Will Venable, build a staff, but build some reputable names, right? Like phenomenal college player, hit for power, players love him. You add him as a bench coach and Grady Sizemore, now we're talking.
So there have been signs of competence from Chris Getz, and a lot of people would laugh that off because of what he was responsible for putting the roster together for the worst team in history. That is true. That is 100% true. He was dealt a shit sandwich, and it tasted even worse than he thought when he took over the job. Now, he did have some of these guys. I love that they moved on from Pedro Grifol. They didn't have a lot to work with. And if you look at their win expected probability, they should have probably been more like a 49-50 win team. They just lost a lot of those games late that they shouldn't have.
Which is nuts to me, right? Like, yeah. It's funny we're even having this conversation because I get rebuilds, right? I get that sometimes players move on. I mean, I remember when we won the World Series, like the next day, Carl Everett called me. He's like, I'm out of here. They're going younger. And it's the sad nature of the business, but my God, the fact that we're sitting here going, yeah, BetMGM had them having at least 49 wins. That just seems that seems like madness. Like that's insanity talk to me.
Especially in 2025, because the way baseball is set up with the structure and revenue sharing, it's not made for teams to be the worst team in the history of the game. It's just not. Maybe 60-win teams, maybe 58-win teams, but not 41-win teams. All right, so you got moving Luis Robert. I'm looking for organizational competence. What's next on your list?
I'm saying all gas, no brakes to get to 63 wins. So my point being is the optics of that look a lot better for people like us hosting a podcast, because then we go, holy shit, they won 20 more games than last year. But at the same time, we've talked about the standard before, right? Like, you should be able to take high-level prospects that you've drafted with a major league roster and roll out there and win 60 games. Like, you should. And if you don't do that, like, people's heads need to roll. So to that point, that's for me, number two is you make it a point to, like, stay out of the triple-digit loss column. And to take a quick step back, I agree. You know, like, Getsy should hold his feet to the fire a little bit. But I think if Jerry Reinsdorf were to miraculously call him tomorrow and say, blank check, dude, spend $300 million, I don't care, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So
I like it. I mean, this would be what, a third straight season of 100 losses, or is it a third straight season?
You're not counting.
No, but like, it's Chicago. I mean, I don't think, unfortunately, I love that goal for you. Like, I like that goal for a first-year manager saying, you want to not be a laughingstock? And this might sound funny, 99 losses, but bring that up in spring training as a message. Like, be different. Be the change. Start the change right now. No one is expecting the White Sox to win, obviously, with those win totals in Vegas or the division. But you can set a different message, especially with a young team, a young, hungry team that's trying to prove their worth in the major leagues. So mine is development. That's what I'd love to see, because and look, so far my two things, competence and development.
Yeah, very vague terms on your part there.
They are, but they're really not when you're talking about the Chicago White Sox.
Sure.
Development is the key to this whole thing. It's the key to what I just said about maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel for Chris Getz. This organization failed the rebuild for two reasons. The first rebuild. Number one, they didn't complete it by signing 9-figure contracts. They didn't bring in a superstar to complement the young pieces that they called their core and ended up paying as if they were stars. But most importantly, it's number one by far, they never developed any of those guys. Yoan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, even Luis Robert to some extent. We saw flashes from the Giolitos. Kopech didn't really develop the way they expected. Andrew Vaughn hasn't really panned out. Crochet was a win. But for the most part, when you look at where the White Sox were in the farm rankings a couple of years, 8 years ago or so, they were number one. They had 6 of the top 35. It didn't matter. It didn't matter because they weren't developed. This organization, and they didn't have as much invested into their minor league systems, into their analytics groups, into their scouting. They didn't have as much as other teams. And it showed. It showed itself on the field. So what I would love to see, there's so much invested into the development of what they have right now, into that young starting pitcher. They have the two, as we've talked about during the Garrett Crochet stuff, the Noah Schultzes, the Hagen Smiths. We had John Eli on talking about all of those guys that could replace Garrett Crochet. And I think we got into 8, 9, 10, 11 deep in some of those names. They've done a great job at being a developing organization in terms of pitching. Where they have failed, and you're a part of this too, and this is not a knock on you, you know this, they have not been able to develop position players. We're sitting here talking, there were Sox fans that were pissed about Kyle Teal being a part of the Garrett Crochet trade because, we already have a catcher, Edgar Carroll. The White Sox haven't developed a catcher since Ron Karkovice. That goes back to
but you brought up a really good point. So we'll circle back towards talking about myself, right? I think in 04, 05, I was the number one ranked prospect. I knew athletically there's nothing I couldn't do on the baseball field. But Konerko brought up a really good point to me a couple years in my career. They're like, he said, you're a big leaguer, Brian, but they probably called you up. You needed about 500 to 1,000 more at bats. So instead of calling me up in 2005, when I was 23, giving me a little bit more seasoning at the AAA level to really kind of wear it and develop and learn and grow as a player and mature, I think that'll help me. But again, I think they saw the way I played center field. I was torching fastballs. It's like fast track him, right? That's how Kenny kind of was always. And I appreciated it. But I think, like you were saying, there's got to be a little bit of grace and a little bit of patience on when it comes to certain guys going, man, we could really use him here. But man, if we could stall for another 500 at bats, this guy's going to be really good.
Yeah. I mean, really good. I love the personal touch you just put on that, because as fans, there's that impatience too, right? We're glued more than ever to MILB.com. We can watch minor league games at a click of a mouse and see when a guy's 3 for 4, he's hit 5 homers in a week, and it just makes you drool and say, let's get him up here now. And the White Sox have always been that fast track organization. I want patience, man. Like, give me patience. I mean, I go back to what John Eli said. If you haven't listened to that, by the way, he's phenomenal. Like, he gave us such depth and insight onto the guys coming that could replace Garrett Crochet. But one thing he said that sticks out is that he doesn't believe Noah Schultz should be in the majors in 2025.
And that shows a lot of patience. That shows a lot of maturity from a coach, and I think him being removed from the organization now allows him to speak on that. Because what is the best compliment as a pitching coach, right, is when your guy becomes awesome, because they go, John Eli helped develop that guy. Maybe he could, the cheap way to ride some coattails to get a big league job, right? And he resisted the urge to do that. So I respect him a lot for that.
Agreed. So, but that's the stuff I'm talking about. I'd rather the player get 500 to 1,000 more at bats. So 1 or 2 seasons, or certainly a full season in AAA or AA, than, well, hey, it's the trade deadline and we just dealt 3 more guys. Oh, he's hitting 240, but we should get him up here. No. That's the one thing I liked about not bringing Colson Montgomery up last year. He didn't have a great year. And so I love the idea of rewarding any of these guys that have worked their entire lives to live out their dream and get that opportunity to be at the big league level. But if you have had a tough year in AAA, then you're bringing a guy up in September to a team that's chasing and has national eyeballs on him for losing. I was really happy that they let him and then go to the Arizona Fall League for a couple of weeks, finish your season on a high note, and let's talk about 2025. All right.
But the breaking balls and pitching doesn't get worse. So I can tell you firsthand. And you talked about on a national spotlight. I was combing through some recaps from the season from last year, and shit, man, Cap freaking, he was every day. They're still shitty. They're going to break the record.
Yep. Those were the eyeballs that we had and we needed. And I'm hoping, again, to your point about chasing 63, I actually like that a lot. And I think it's at least let the guys, it's a weird goal to have, but not when this is what has been set, and stop being the laughingstock, be part of the change. All right. So we've both named 2. What's your third?
So you touched on it briefly, and this goes back to our interview with Eli, right? John Eli did an incredible job of reminding us of reward the players that deserve a shot, because based off last year, there's no better way to deflate or knock the wind out of one of your players' sails than when you're the shittiest team in the league and you got a sub-2 ERA, or you're cranking the ball and you're showing like you're putting together great at-bats and you don't get called up. Like, what the hell is the guy supposed to do after that? You're going, coach, I'm a AAA All-Star. I'm an International League All-Star, and I can't get called up, and our team's at the bottom of the barrel in the AL Central. So I think Chris Getz and the organization, Paul Janisch, I think now that they kind of have like free reign to say like, hey, like guys, that message will be on the forefront in spring training. Like, guys, you saw what we had last year. Like, we're going to make some changes, but you're going to get opportunities. If you're dealing in AAA, come show us what you got.
Yeah. And he was talking specifically about a couple of relievers that were the best relievers in the minor leagues, certainly in the Southern League, that got cups of coffee, or I shouldn't even say cups of coffee. They got promoted to AAA and were still there cooking and never got that call up. And there was certainly the White Sox needed, every team needs bullpen help, and the White Sox, hopefully in 2025, like they just bring all those guys to camp and let them compete, and the best guys win. And like you said, if a guy has got 6, 7, 8, crappy appearances, there's a guy waiting to cook in AAA. You just swap them back out.
Yeah, and there's like the Hagen Smiths. Like, I get you don't want to start his clock, but the I don't want to start the arbitration clock game when you have 40 wins. That shit ain't gonna fly. And I think Chris will do a good job of rewarding players.
All right, so I like so those are your 3. To put a bow on that, I think those are a strong 3. I'm not sure which of those are my favorite because they're all good. I think they all equal like the same. They're all part of trying to get this thing turned back around again, which leads me to mine, and it kind of goes into with your 63 wins. Change the narrative. That's my third one. Change the narrative. And it's not going to have, people are going to be like, you're talking about 2025. Guff, you said they can't even compete till 2027. I did. Change the narrative means when I say be the change, Will Venable starts it. Change the narrative for me is hiring Will Venable and letting him do the job, not handing him a lineup from upstairs, not, hey, this is what to compete. Let Will Venable, who had a good playing career and learn from Hall of Famers to get this job. He turned down the right to be in Cleveland or to go further in Cleveland and with the Mets last year in the managerial process because he didn't feel like he was ready. He wanted one more year under Boch. And he feels like this is the job. Let him do it. And let him. I don't want any acronyms. I don't want any of this play fast bullshit that's all over Glendale and these little, no, the players never bought into him. You're doing things in year 2 out of desperation. Sometimes I like desperation. Not in that case. I want Will Venable to set the tone from the start of the camp. I mean, start it at Sox Fest. Say, hey, go out, take the guys out for dinner, get them drinks. Today's where we start the change. When you report to Glendale, it's all gas, no brakes. I like that from you earlier. All gas.
Well, and you're absolutely right. Like, first off, don't buy them drinks, buy them video games.
True.
Good point. The landscape's changed a little bit, Guff, but good point. Yeah, well, but no, like one thing I always respected about Ozzie, day one, clubhouse, before we even took the field. This is how we're going to do it. Young guys better throw strikes, be on time. I don't give a shit if you're going through divorce, hungover, show up ready to play. And it doesn't matter if you're Jim Thome or you're me. Like, you don't run a ball out hard, lack of effort, we're sending you down. We're going to trade you. Like, the bare minimum, the standard is we can stink, but Chicago White Sox fans will never, ever tolerate not hustling, not running the ball out, not communicating, not playing catch. You can do that. You're a major league player. Yep.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. Like when Pedro Grifol was saying, play fast and this team is built for him. It wasn't. This team needs to be sharp defensively. It needs to run first to third. It needs to not get caught in like the same kind of rundowns. It can't miss the cutoff man. I know that that's like basic fundamental baseball that we all learned at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, but this team hasn't fundamentally played good baseball. I'd rather watch them lose 4-2, but be like, damn, that was a good baseball game. Or they lose 6-5 where they just didn't have enough, but they played the game hard and they chased they chased the first place team all the way to the end. We haven't had that. Even when the White Sox won the Division 21, it didn't feel like that. That's the kind of stuff where I'm saying change the narrative. It's not going to equal a lot of wins in 25, but if you set that tone, it's going to change people's thinking about coming to the White Sox in 26, 27, and 28 when it's time to actually add guys.
Well, yeah, like would you say those cliche one-liners like they hang up around the stadium? That's the equivalent of like my wife hanging like a live, laugh, love in the kitchen. Instant divorce. I told her we have some non-negotiables. I'm like, if you ever hang that shit in our house, like live, laugh, love. I'm like, don't ever tell me what to do while I'm eating. Like, I don't need you to, like, if my daughter makes me smile or says something funny, I'm not going to look up in the kitchen and be like, there it is, honey. It says laugh. I got it. Yeah, it's so stupid.
I love it. All right. So those are our 3 things that we'd love to see from the White Sox in 2025. Before we take off here, I asked you to pick or to name one bold move the White Sox would make before spring training. Now, keep in mind, I should bold the word bold and italicize it and underline it because it probably doesn't mean bold at like the Cubs are thinking or bold like the Dodgers or Yankees are thinking. So it's one bold move. Like mine, people are going to be like, bold. That's not bold. So what's one move you expect the White Sox, or you'd like to see the White Sox make before spring training?
It's going to be a fun one. It may not be a complete, scoreboard changer, but I think if they're smart, they go snag a guy like Kike Hernandez, free agent, play everywhere, go play center, short, third, second. He'll be that lightning bolt off the bench, and he'll light Luis Roberts' fucking ass up if he doesn't run the ball out to first base. He'll be like, "What are you doing, dude?" But Luis won't be there anyway, so it matters.
It's funny that a guy like Kike Hernandez has spent his entire career with basically the Dodgers, Red Sox, and Dodgers, and the same teams keep acquiring him when it's time to run for or go for a postseason berth. I don't hate that. I do that. They need players like that. Those are the type of guys he is a free agent. The guys like Paul DeYoung and Nicky Lopez that they brought in last year. And I know those guys weren't great baseball players. DeYoung did get traded, but I was in that clubhouse a lot last year, and I expected it to be the worst place I've ever been in, and it was far from that. Yeah. So more guys like that. Mine is going to be bring back Jose Quintana. Bring back Jose Quintana as a stabilizer, front line, or at least front of your rotation. He can be the guy you rely on. He can be the opening day starter. He can come back to a place he already knows. He likes the city. He spent a bulk of his career here. He's comfortable here. And let him show the young staff what it's like to work every fifth day. This guy, I think he made 11, 13, 14 starts last year for the Mets, but he won a playoff game. Like, he should be a guy that, to me, a lot of teams are trying to add a fourth or fifth or sixth starter that would line up and get Quintana. If you have to give him a couple extra million in order to do that, I would. If it's I think like a 1 for 15 with maybe an option on the back end, or if you have to do 2 for 22 or something, BA, I would do it. Quintana's arm has held up. He has a 3.7 ERA over the course of his career. You talked about it when you started by trading Luis Robert. You needed a mid-rotation guy. Bring that guy back to lead this rotation and show young guys what it's like. Yeah, lefties with 4 pitches too. I mean, no team's going that good to turn that down, especially not the Sox. So it's a great call. So seriously, I'm being dead serious about this. Could you imagine they do something like go out and get Quintana and a Kike? Because now you basically have a Quintana being part of your 9, and you have Quintana being part of that group. That's the leadership type stuff that you can. And look, people are going to be like, why would Quintana want to sign here? All of these, if Quintana pitches really well for 3 months, guess what's happening? He's going to a contender. Okay. And you add more prospects to the pool. You add more prospects. And you at least have 4 months of having that guy get in the minds of young kids trying to come up and be Jose Quintana. Good stuff, BA. I think we solved all the problems. Yeah. You know what? I don't want to say it yet, but this might have been my favorite podcast. Oh boy. I think you've said that the last 8 we've done. So this is the 9th one we've done. Hey man, I appreciate you as we head into the new year. I'm really glad that as you said, we exchanged some texts over the last couple of weeks. Very reflective time of year for me. I try to take a step back and look at the year that was and the people in my life. And I'm very happy that you and I have connected to do this, not just for the fans, but certainly for the both of us. It's been fun to just have you part of my daily life. And I think this thing's only going to the moon and back, baby. So for the people who've hopped on from the beginning, we appreciate you, but there's a lot more to come. We have a lot more guest ideas, a lot more things that we want to do in 2025. So BA, I really appreciate you, my man. Same here, brother. Happy New Year to all of you who listen to us here at the White Sox Recap Podcast and all of the stuff that we do daily on the recap. For Brian Anderson, I'm Ryan McGuffey. Have a happy and healthy and very safe 2025, and we'll see you guys in the new year. Take that.